Welcome back, YouTube. Today we're going to talk about picking out a new monitor and how I landed on the BenQ SW271. So previously I was using an Asus PB8Q and I had that calibrated with a Color Monkey, but I knew I wanted to step up to 4K. I also knew that when upgrading, I wanted something that was specifically designed for color accuracy. And after a ton of research, I ended up choosing the BenQ SW271, and I decided to make this video because there are so many specs related to monitors that I didn't even know what they meant when I first looked at it. So it took a lot of not only reading the specs, learning what those specs meant, and then comparing them between models, just a ton of information. So I figured I'd explain to you guys what all those specs mean. First off, it's 27 inches, and I find that 27 inches is a perfect size when you're working just a couple feet away. It's large enough that I can see everything very, very clearly, but it's not so big that I'm actually turning my head to look around the screen. You can raise or lower this monitor, you can tilt, swivel, rotate it, you can even turn it completely sideways and put it in portrait mode if you want. If you regularly shoot in portrait mode, it actually might be a better way to edit because you'd have more screen real estate for your image. So the I/O, which stands for inputs and outputs, definitely covers all the bases. It has Type-C, DisplayPort, and 2 HDMIs for input. There's also 2 USB ports and an SD card reader. So if you have a USB port hooked up to the upstream into your computer, then you can use that port to connect any flash drives, hard drives, or other peripherals. So the most important part of a monitor is, of course, the screen itself. Being a 4K monitor, that means that the BenQ SW271 is always showing you 8 megapixels. This is 4 times the resolution of a standard 1080p HD monitor. But with 1080p HD already looking so good, what does that even do for you? I'll tell you this much, I read a lot online about people saying that the human eye can't even discern the difference between 4K and 1080p. Anybody who says that either hasn't looked at a 4K monitor, they're lying, or they're legally blind, because you can definitely see a difference, at least at a regular working distance to a computer. After working on a 4K monitor for a month, I can definitely spot the difference instantly of a 1080p display. It's kind of like when you got used to Blu-ray and then you would go back and like watch your grandma's TV and it looked all fuzzy. I mean, it's definitely not as significant of a difference as then, but you can clearly tell. The looking good doesn't mean much unless it provides a function for you. But for me, the 4K has actually helped my workflow quite a bit. Most notably, I don't have to zoom in barely ever when I'm going through and culling images, when I'm making my selections between images. As a wedding photographer with bridal parties and families, and even images where the bride and groom or people in the images are smaller, I often have to zoom in just to check if eyes are open, whether I'm caught in the middle of a blink or someone's just looking down can make all the difference in an image. And when using my previous monitor, I had to constantly zoom in to see those details. On this, I don't have to zoom in at all because there's that extra pixel density that allows you to see those details more clearly. This has helped me to reduce my time culling, especially considering how long it takes Lightroom to render things one-to-one. Same goes for retouching. Small details and distractions tend to catch my eye quicker, and I don't have to zoom in to address them because I can see those details and address them with a smaller brush, rather than zooming in and spending more time navigating around the image. The other benefit is multitasking. On my last monitor, I didn't like going into the 4 windows, and sometimes I didn't even like going into 2 side-by-side windows, just because some applications just didn't have the detail in them to work in that. But with this one, I can comfortably go into the 4 windows because it's like working with 4 1080p screens at one time. I haven't noticed a huge dip on my computer's performance working in 4K either, so that's been nice, but I do have a pretty hefty graphics card. The only negative so far that I found when working in 4K is that Windows scaling just isn't that great. So some applications don't really show up well, or the text and images in it look a little fuzzy. Adobe's got some work to do when it comes to the text, but everything image related looks just fine. This also isn't an issue at all with Apple. My MacBook looks great. All the scaling looks really awesome when I've got it hooked up to the display as opposed to using my desktop. So resolution is great and all, but what I really wanted from the BenQ SW271 was awesome color accuracy and color reproduction. So it covers 100% of the sRGB color space, 99% of the Adobe RGB color space, and it's even 10-bit compatible. It also has a Delta E rating of 2, which puts it in the same color class as, say, a Dell Ultra Sharp. In my research, if you wanted to do any better in terms of color accuracy while maintaining 4K and all the other specs, you were looking at spending close to $3,000. Okay, I know I just threw a ton of different colors and color spaces and numbers at you. To sum it all up, these specs mean that you have a ton of colors to work with, and the accuracy accuracy to ensure that they're gonna look great whether you end up displaying things by print or digitally. Now you can't control how other people's monitors and digital devices look, so the best you can do is calibrate yourself and make sure that your work looks good going out. That's really all you can do. Each monitor comes with a calibration report. The monitor also has a little prompt that reminds you when it's time to be calibrated. Calibration is applied to the imaging chip inside the monitor rather than applied digitally via software. So it's not changing the graphics output, it's changing how the monitor shows you the colors. So this is great because if you make any changes to software, that doesn't mean your hardware is going to all of a sudden display different colors. And the software that they have for calibrating the monitor is compatible with both X-Ray and Datacolor Spider products, which is awesome. Those are like the two most common color calibration units out there. You also get to calibrate two profiles. So if you're using multiple inputs like a laptop and a desktop PC, you can calibrate each of those so that there's not any differences between the two. Included with the monitor is some connection cables, HDMI, DisplayPort, and a Type-C USB, which is way too short to be very useful. I do wish that Type-C cable was longer because it's the most useful way to connect to the PC for the display information, as well as enable the USB devices on the side. There's a modular shading hood that comes with it, and you can use this for the display in either portrait mode or for landscape mode. And it's also got a little hole in the top so that you can slide your calibration tool through the top. So you can use that monitor if you're in a room where the ambient light is ever changing to kind of block it out and keep a more even amount of light hitting your monitor so that you aren't influenced to make any decisions color-wise based on your environment. But for me, I always just black out my window, turn on the light so that I always have a consistent environment, which is the same environment that I calibrate my monitor in. Last thing that it comes with is the hotkey puck. This plugs into a specific USB slot underneath the monitor that's dedicated for the hotkey puck, and it allows you to make some quick adjustments. The three buttons by default are programmed to switch between Adobe RGB, sRGB, and black and white. You can also adjust the menu or customize those keys to other functions like brightness and contrast. I think it's really awesome for quickly toggling into the sRGB color space, because if you want to work in the more advanced Adobe RGB color space, but you want to quickly check how your image is going to look for web, it's awesome to flip into sRGB and see if there's any banding issues or other color issues that you might suffer once you convert your image. This thing also has HDR10, which doesn't really have much to do with photography, but it does stand for high dynamic range. So if you're ingesting any HDR content, then this is fully capable to display it along with that 4K. It's awesome for some premium content on Netflix. All in all, I'm really happy with this monitor and the decision to go into 4K. I know cameras and monitors and Netflix and anybody producing content, they're all yelling 4K, 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 and trust me, it's not a requirement to go to 4K yet. They make it seem like it's a massive big deal, and it affects about this much. There's these little minor benefits, but it is definitely where the future is going, and if you want to be on the front end of it, you're gonna pay a premium right now. This monitor specifically is about $1,100 in the US, which sounds like a huge investment, but if you're a professional, you really have to be serious about your output staying consistent and the color being accurate and having a really tight workflow so that whatever you're distributing as images, whether it be digital or with print, is coming out how you intended it to. So at a minimum, calibrate your monitor, guys. It's like a necessity for our industry. If you don't think that 4K is necessarily worth it or you want a different size, BenQ's got the whole creative class of monitors that are designed to work for creative professionals, so there's definitely a lot of options outside the one that I ended up with that could fit your needs a little bit better, so be sure to check those out. I hope this video helped you out. Leave a like if it did, subscribe if you want to see more, and you can join my photography gear chat group on Facebook if you're looking for a place to chat with me, thousands of other professional photographers about the gear and equipment of photography. Also, if you want to see more of these hardware related videos, the equipment surrounding photography, but not necessarily lenses, lights, and camera bodies, then please let me know in the comments. Other than that, see you next time. Keep on shooting, YouTube.